Hi folks, this is Jason. We're looking at Dr. Hart's Atheist Delusions, and he says, in truth, if one really wishes to make Alexandria of the first 4 centuries one's index for understanding the interaction of Christian and pagan culture, and proceeds without excessive prejudice, what one will find is that pagans and Christians alike had their scholars and philosophers who frequently studied at one another's feet, regardless of religious adherence, that both also had their cruel superstitions, violent rabble, and that the priests of both traditions were as likely to occupy one class as the other. One will find too that, at the most elevated levels of philosophical discourse, both traditions admitted of debates concerning the degree to which the power of natural reason was sufficient to attain divine truth, and the degree to which one must rely on divine revelation, and that a tendency towards a pure contemplative monotheism had a consequent disdain for or indifference towards popular cults was pronounced among many pagans for a more philosophical cast of mind. And one will find also that at the lower levels of society the Christians and pagans were distinct tribes that sometimes lived in harmonious, even exogamous concord, and that sometimes went to war with one another. It would have been wonderful, or obviously, and a splendid testament to the power of high ideals, if Greek prudence or Christian charity have governed every person of the time and pervaded every stratum of society. It would have been wonderful, especially if all the baptized Christians of the age, whose ideals were by far the higher and nobler, had never yielded to the hatred of the cults of their erstwhile persecutors as fervidly as they sometimes did. But human beings frequently disappoint. As for the actual destruction of the Serapeum, it came late in a period of particularly intense religious persecution, and a violence that had begun a century and a half earlier under the pagan emperor Decius, AD 201 to 251. In the years leading up to his short reign, 249-251, persecution of Christians had tended to be limited and intermittent, but in January 250 he issued an edict requiring every citizen to make a token obligation at a pagan altar before an official witness. Many Christians who refused were arrested, certain prominent bishops were executed, and for a year the persecution persisted. But the project proved something of a failure. Systematic persecution ceased before Decius' death in June 251, and his successor Gallus in AD 253 was apparently content that it did not resume. So basically what he's saying there is, atheists look back and they say, Christians did that, Christians did this, but he's saying, look, history is much more complex than he's just talking about the early church in Alexandria and the complexities of what the Christian context was, and also that the pagans were just as they had their issues and their problems and their difficulties, and just to have these black and white kind of scenarios in history saying they are the baddies is not being honest to the facts that things are much more complex. And this scholar is trying to elaborate this and to give you a feel for the complexity of history, which many atheist thinkers out there are just giving you propaganda and sound bites. Thank you.